Hello, everyone.
My wife took off out of nowhere, and it turns out she has been cheating on me for 4 years because, in her words, she got bored. Now, she wants to come back, and honestly, I am completely lost about what to do. I am hoping for any advice on this mess of a situation. My wife, who is 39, and I, at 40, have been married for 17 years. We have 3 daughters, ages 15, 13, and 1. We have been together since high school, so that's about 23 years of my life I have shared with her. This is how it all started. 3 days ago, my wife came home from work, acting strangely emotional. She barely spoke, threw some clothes into an overnight bag, and just left. Our oldest daughter, who was at home, saw her frantic packing and tried talking to her, but my wife barely acknowledged her, just crying and in a panic. Since that night, we have had zero contact with her. I tried reaching out to her parents right away, and finally, they replied to say that she is safe with them. They asked me to be patient and understanding. That was all they said. In my desperation, I contacted her siblings and even one of her close friends from work. Her brother knew nothing, and her work friend said that my wife was at work that morning but left by lunch. That's all any of us know. It has been 3 days now without a single word from her. Not to me, not even to our kids. The girls keep asking what happened to their mom, if we fought, if we are getting divorced. I can only tell them she is with their grandparents and that we are supposed to be patient and understanding. I cannot stand this limbo. I feel like packing up the girls, getting in the car, and driving the 3 hours to her parents' place, but I have held back. The girls believe we had a huge argument or something and that a divorce is on the way, which is far from the truth. We have never really fought, and the kids know that. I am just sitting here, going in circles, wondering what on earth could have driven her to leave us like this without any explanation. Some logical explanation must exist, but I am so emotionally drained that my mind cannot stop spinning. If someone in her family had passed away, I would have expected her to tell me first. If she was dealing with some kind of trauma, I thought I would be the first one she turned to. None of this makes any sense, and I am lost. I am here with my daughters, feeling worried, scared, and angry, every possible emotion. Can anyone think of a reason why she would ghost her own family like this? I am new to Reddit, so I am not sure how to link my first post. It was a rough night, no sleep at all. I went through each comment on my post yesterday and read responses late into the night. I am not spending much time online today, but I did want to provide an update. My father-in-law did not reach out last night, so I decided to contact the police. They performed a wellness check, which led to a whole storm of issues I will not go into here. As it turns out, my wife has been involved in an affair for at least 2 years, maybe even longer. The other man, it seems, had a heart attack on Tuesday and passed away that night. Apparently, my mother-in-law and likely my sister-in-law have known about it and have been covering for her. I still have not heard a word from my wife. Not to me, not to our daughters. I am doing my best to keep this news from them for now. I have no idea where to go from here, but that is all I know. Please, if you pray, keep me and my family in your thoughts. After some recommendations, I joined this subreddit and have been reading posts whenever I have a moment, mostly late at night when the day is finally quiet. I keep bouncing between depression and bursts of anger, with sleep being nearly impossible. I just drift through my days and a days. I am still learning the abbreviations here. I think Friday was my D-Day, the day I found out. What I initially thought was a 2-year affair looks like it probably went on much longer. The man she was seeing was an acquaintance from her past, and it all came to light when he suddenly passed away from a heart attack. My oldest daughter has been helping me gather information, but there are a lot of details I am just not ready to get into here. I honestly did not plan on making more posts, but the advice and support I have received has been surprisingly helpful. It almost feels therapeutic. It is devastating to realize that so many others are suffering through similar pain, and my heart goes out to them. I have met with 2 lawyers to understand my options and have reached out for therapy, but the wait times around here are long. I have been following the advice to avoid alcohol, though I am not much of a drinker to begin with. Self-care, working out, and all that. I used to be in great shape, but it is hard to find the motivation these days. I know a lot of people want details about the who, what, and when, but I am just not ready to go into it all yet. Every day feels like a fresh wound reopening. My wife was my best friend since high school, the mother of my 3 beautiful daughters. We had so many shared memories, inside jokes, even secret handshakes. And now it is like it all meant nothing to her. Thinking about the future without her is unbearable. I keep asking myself how this could have happened, and when the anger rises, it feels impossible to contain. I scream into my pillow and punch the mattress until my arms give out, trapped in this awful cycle. When I do manage to sleep, it is out of sheer exhaustion, only to wake up suddenly and get dragged back into the same mental torment. Whatever energy I have goes to taking care of my girls, who have been stepping up, almost like they are the parents, and that is just not fair to them. How did any of you get through those first nights after finding out about an affair? How did you handle the silence and the emptiness in the dark, alone with only your thoughts? I have decided that, outside of being there for my daughters, sleep needs to be my top priority right now. But honestly, I just cannot seem to find any rest. I am hoping someone here might have some advice. Thank you all. I am still getting used to Reddit, so I am not sure how much of my story I am supposed to recap, but it has been just over a week since my D-Day. Since then, I have found out that my wife's affair went on for over 4 years. I do not have an exact timeline, but it sounds like it started as an emotional connection and later became physical. I also wonder if the lockdowns during the pandemic played a role, but those are questions I may never get answers to. Yesterday, my in-laws dropped by unannounced to see their grandkids. My wife has been staying with them since this all started, which honestly feels like a slap in the face. They spent maybe 15 minutes greeting the girls before asking to talk to me privately. It was a long conversation, and I do not feel like rehashing all of it here. But to sum it up, my wife wants to come home. She is scared of facing the fallout of her actions and worried about how we would react. Her parents were also very focused on figuring out if I plan to divorce her, and they pushed hard, trying to convince me to forgive her and consider rebuilding our marriage. They looked ashamed and embarrassed, but also seemed ready to have her out of their house. I will admit, I lied to them. I told them I was unsure about my plans for the future. Truthfully, I am set on divorcing her, but if I reveal that now, I may never hear the full story from her. I want her to sit down, face to face, and tell me everything. We have spent over 17 years married, been together since high school, built a life and raised 3 children together. I want her to look me in the eyes and explain it all. I also want my kids to know I gave her a chance to apologize, that I offered her an opportunity to handle this like adults. Maybe I am going about this all wrong, but I am trying to choose a path that sets a good example for my daughters. Legally, I cannot prevent her from coming home. My lawyer made that crystal clear. If she decides to move back in, there is nothing I can do to stop her, though I am definitely not ready for it. My daughters and I have actually started to settle into a decent routine. So, I made what I thought was a near impossible request. My wife can come back if, and only if, she sits down with me in person, looks me in the eyes, and answers all my questions, fully and honestly, from beginning to end. She also needs to apologize to our girls face to face and answer any questions they might have, as they already know something is wrong. Legally, she does not have to agree to any of this. She can come home anytime, and I cannot stop her. But if she is afraid to face us, maybe this will buy me some time. I am not trying to be manipulative. I just really want to delay this until I can get into a better mental state. Our state has a mandatory 90-day waiting period before a divorce can be finalized anyway, so I know she will be back eventually, and we will both have to return to our jobs and carry on with life. I would just like to take this time to plan and steady myself emotionally. She has been texting our daughters, saying she does not want a divorce and repeatedly apologizing to them. She asks about me in nearly every message, and it seems like the reality of what she has done is starting to hit her, especially over the past few days. I am trying to figure out how to handle this. Was my request unreasonable? It looks like my wife may come back sooner rather than later, but I feel ready for that, at least in a practical sense. I want to make the right choice for my daughters and myself as we move forward. Thank you to everyone who has been offering support, advice, and encouragement. I apologize for the long post, but I need to get this out. This weekend was a complete nightmare, but my wife finally came back home yesterday. There was a lot of buildup over the week as her return got closer. Usually, when she would walk through the door, I would greet her with a hug and a kiss, but this time, there was this incredibly awkward tension between us. She actually tried to hug me, but I turned away. Unbelievable, acting like nothing had happened. Once she settled in, I asked her to tell me everything. Once again, she said she was not ready. We had spoken earlier in the week, and it was the same response then. I reminded her that the only condition for moving back was that she loved the family enough to explain her absence, especially since it has been almost 3 weeks. But all she kept saying was that she was not ready. It took all my strength not to yell at her. I took a few deep breaths, tried to calm myself, but eventually, I could not hold it in. After a long silence, I finally told her that I knew about her affair, that it had been going on for more than 4 years with her coworker. I said that she had abandoned her entire family, and now she was back, not even willing to meet the one request I had asked for. I told her I wanted a divorce. At that point, her reaction was strange. She looked completely blindsided, like she had no idea just how much I knew. I had uncovered the truth about her affair, and when I confronted her, she just looked at me wide-eyed before lowering her gaze, staring silently at the floor. She did not say a word, just stood there. I had braced myself for any possible reaction: anger, tears, a defensive argument, maybe even a confession or an attempt to blame me for everything. I was prepared for her to scream, break down, or suggest we sit and talk things out seriously. But instead, I got nothing. We must have stood there in absolute silence for what felt like 5 minutes. It was the strangest moment I have ever been through. She was clearly at a loss for words, and so was I. I had gone over everyone's comments and advice and had mentally rehearsed every possible outcome for this confrontation, even talking through scenarios in front of a mirror. But I had never imagined this. So, in the silence, I did what felt natural. I started laying out everything I knew about her affair. Looking back, it may have been impulsive, but I detailed everything I had pieced together, adding in some of my own assumptions about how she met the other man, her sister's involvement, what might have happened during the pandemic, and so on. She just kept her eyes on the floor, saying nothing. The more I talked, the angrier I got, but I worked hard not to raise my voice or lose control. After a long, awkward pause, my anger gave way to sadness. I asked softly, "What did I do to push you away? Did you ever truly love me? Was he worth it?" Still, she said nothing. She did not move, cry, or apologize. No explanation, no emotion, just stood there, staring at the floor. The silence hurt even more than the initial discovery of her affair. I was at a loss, standing there, staring at her, unsure of what to do next. And then, things got worse. Our daughters had been listening to the entire conversation. I had been so caught up in the moment, I did not even think about where they were. Our oldest daughter stormed downstairs, furious, and unleashed her bottled-up anger at her mom. My wife quickly ran upstairs, locking herself in the bedroom. That is where things stand now. I heard her crying through the night, but only our youngest daughter has tried talking to her. The rest of us have kept our distance. If I can find the strength, I'm going to suggest she stay with her sister until we can finalize the divorce. But this is still her home too, and cohabitating is going to be miserable for all of us. I was wrong about her. Everyone here was right. I was mistaken about our years together, our memories, all the moments I thought were life-changing for both of us. I was convinced she would be on her knees, begging for forgiveness, eager to unburden herself with the whole truth. This is the same woman who once drove back to a farmer's market to return $10 extra in change, but somehow, I am not worth that honesty. Now I am left wondering, what next? Today was unbearably tense at home. My daughters and I tried to carry on as we have over the past couple of weeks, but it is obviously not the same anymore. I wish I could fast forward through all this. The divorce, the painful conversations, the inevitable arguments, and drama. For those who have had to live under the same roof with a wayward spouse, especially with kids involved, how did you manage? I keep reading posts that say things will eventually get better, but that feels so far away right now. There is never a moment when I do not feel like screaming. I am doing everything I can to hold it together for my daughters, but I am not sure how long I can keep this up. School will start soon, and we will be right in the thick of this mess. I guess this is my life now. I cannot say enough how much I appreciate each one of you who has offered advice, support, and encouragement. I do not know if the hardest part is behind me or yet to come, but any help to get me through would mean the world. I am struggling, and it has been this way since my wife came back and since I learned about her affair. I have been putting on a front for my daughters, trying to say and do all the right things, but tonight I need to be honest. Like so many people have shared, the pain comes in waves, and tonight it hit hard, breaking my composure a bit. The divorce papers are filed, but my wife has yet to get a lawyer. I am trying to be patient and careful about this, hoping for an uncontested divorce that we can mostly handle ourselves. But after tonight, I am not so sure. We have been cohabitating during the week, and my wife goes to her sister's house on Friday nights, returning home on Sundays since her sister's place is about an hour away, depending on traffic. For the past few weeks, this has been our routine, mostly avoiding each other while my daughters and I try to carry on with normalcy, and my wife keeps to herself. My oldest daughter and her mother are not speaking after a couple of heated arguments, and it is probably for the best right now. I have been trying to follow the advice many of you have shared here. I am working on self-discipline around my wife, and it takes every ounce of strength I have to stay indifferent and keep conversations short, though I am always polite and respectful. Still, tonight pushed me past my limits. For the past few Fridays, she has come home after work, packed a few things, and then headed off to her sister's place for the weekend. I got home from work tonight, and there she was, waiting for me in the kitchen. I tried to walk right past her, but she gently grabbed my hand and asked, "Is this how you're going to treat me just because I am not ready to talk about my affair?" That was the very first time she had even acknowledged her cheating since this all came crashing down nearly a month ago. I tried, I swear I did, to just keep my mouth shut and walk away. But our daughters were not home, and that familiar wave of anger rose up inside me, and I just let it all out. I unloaded everything I have been holding in, every ounce of pain, anger, and misery that has been eating away at me. I honestly could not tell you how long I went on because I completely lost track of time. I got loud, my voice rising as I poured out everything I had been feeling. I told her exactly how broken I am and how much agony I live in every day. It was as though everything I have bottled up over these weeks just came pouring out, and once I started, there was no stopping it. I even cried and got emotional. I could not help myself, and afterward, I was so angry at myself. I had been doing so well, keeping it together, and then I let her get to me. I knew this moment would come eventually, but it is still frustrating to think I lost control. I felt some satisfaction in seeing her finally break down, sobbing uncontrollably, in a way I had not seen before. She kept repeating, "I am so sorry," over and over, her face red and swollen from crying. I wish I did not care, but there was a part of me that felt some relief in seeing her finally hurting too. For a moment, I felt like maybe there was still some humanity in her. Eventually, I left the kitchen before she could pull herself together. I told her to please leave me alone, and she stayed in the kitchen for a while before heading back to her sister's house. About a half hour later, the girls came home, and though they sensed something had happened, I was not ready to talk about it. I do not think they need to know what went down. My two youngest are doing better, and I do not want to risk setting back their progress. And if I told my oldest, it would only fuel her anger, which I do not want to do either. I am just so frustrated with myself. I should have kept my composure, just ignored her and walked past. Now, looking back, it feels like maybe she was trying to start a conversation about her affair but did not know how. My anger probably shut down whatever attempt she was making. And, strangely, I have started worrying about her. I know some of you will criticize me for that, but I do not want her to come to harm. She has been isolated, and nearly everyone has turned away from her. Yes, I know she deserves it, but she is still a human being and the mother of my children. I am disappointed in myself for this setback. I even called my brother to vent, and I am trying to pick myself up and start fresh again on Monday. I am only human. It actually felt good to let all my feelings out, but the regret hit me hard afterward. Should I reach out to her, or should I just let it be? I am a mess right now, but thank you all for listening and supporting me. I cannot thank you enough for all the advice and encouragement. In the middle of this chaos, we have started therapy, which is something, but it is still incredibly tough. I wanted to step back from the internet, but this past week has been rough, and I feel like I am backsliding. My wife has been constantly around me, apologizing repeatedly for her affair, breaking down and sobbing, then hovering over me, asking to talk. Some nights, she even knocks on my door, wanting to talk, but I have mostly ignored her unless I was in the mood. By Wednesday night, I snapped and told her to leave me alone. Then, last night, just over a month since she moved back in after everything blew up, she came into my room once the girls were in bed and asked to talk privately. She approached me differently than she had all week. So at first, I brushed her off, but eventually, we ended up in the garage, sitting in my car so we would not risk the kids overhearing. What followed was a nearly 3-hour conversation, and according to her, she finally told me everything. I stayed up all night, unable to sleep, listening to her sobbing in the other room. I am still processing everything she said and sorting through my feelings. I ended up crying too, then getting angry and having to fight the urge to go back in and scream at her, and then crying again. It was just this endless loop of emotions. Forgive me if I take a day or so to respond to anyone. I need to get all of this off my chest and then attempt to sleep. Having my wife constantly apologizing and begging for another chance has not helped either. She spent all evening doing that again, and I finally had to leave for a few hours just to clear my head and get some distance. The pain of being around her is just unbearable. As for the affair, she told me she was introduced to her affair partner by her sister about 5 years ago, well before the pandemic. There was no initial romantic intention. He was in a higher position at the company where she wanted to work, and he helped her get a foot in the door. So her desire to change jobs was unrelated to the affair at first, but once she was there, the extra incentive emerged. He began flirting with her, and it started with texting, then progressed to exchanging photos, and then turned physical just before the lockdowns hit. Apparently, she confided in her sister about it, saying she wanted to come clean to me back then but decided to bury it instead. She claims she cut off contact with him during the pandemic, but once lockdowns were lifted, he reached out to her, and she resumed talking to him. Eventually, the affair became physical again once businesses reopened. She said she tried to end things out of guilt a couple of times, but she kept going back to him, so in reality, it never truly ended. She actually had a lot to say, bringing out a 5-page, handwritten packet outlining her affair timeline. She read the entire thing to me, answering questions along the way. She lied about weekends away with our daughters, made up stories about work trips, and invented excuses like traffic jams, family issues, or shopping trips. It was an endless list of lies, and I never questioned any of it. I just trusted her. Hearing all of this only made me feel worse, like everyone had warned it would. But she never grew distant, never withdrew emotionally like I have read others often do during affairs. Our intimacy changed, but not enough to set off any red flags. She admitted that she fell in love with this man and started imagining a life with him. He was older, divorced, and single, and he promised her expensive vacations and a life of luxury. She got caught up in the thrill, and she said the temptation was just too strong to resist. She spoke candidly, getting emotional and seemingly honest, saying she felt trapped in the routines of family life. Halfway through, I lost my composure and broke down crying. It hurt deeply to hear it all, as you would expect. When she finished, she told me how much she loved me, how she always had, and that she was willing to do anything to save our marriage. Many of you had predicted this, but it felt insincere, almost rehearsed. I have been with her for well over half my life, and I can tell when she is not being genuine. Maybe I am wrong, but it just did not feel real. I managed to keep my composure better than last week, but I did get angry and said a few harsh things, even throwing in a jab about how her affair partner was also seeing multiple women, treating her as just another fling he could easily discard. That seemed to hit her hard. I have thought a million things about this confrontation, rehearsing lines in my head and planning responses, but the one thing I knew I would ask her was this. If her affair partner were still alive and she had to choose between him and me, who would she pick? She hesitated before finally mumbling, "That is not fair." I pressed her, and eventually, she said she would pick me. My response was that her hesitation was the reason I was divorcing her, because she was lying again. She broke down into sobs, and that was the last she spoke. We sat in the car for a while, her crying and me just sitting there, exhausted. Finally, I told her we were divorcing, but that we owed it to our girls to get along civilly, to be the best parents we could be. I also told her that after all the pain she had put me through, I hoped she would be decent enough to go through with a fair, amicable divorce as a sign that she actually cared for me in some way. The last thing I said to her was borrowed from something I read online. Please understand, I did not mean to be petty or hurtful, but it felt like a fitting end. I leaned over, kissed her on the forehead, and told her that I would have loved her forever. Then I got out of the car and went to bed. Of course, I did not sleep that night, and here I am again, unable to sleep tonight. I do not know what comes next. The deadline for her to contest the divorce has passed, so that is one relief, but I have not spoken to my lawyer yet. I find myself crying all over again, slipping back into that cycle of depression and anger. Hearing everything last night was incredibly hard, and in truth, I could have done without knowing all of it. She could have lied about some parts, too. Who really knows? But it all seemed to fit perfectly with what I have uncovered over the past month. It feels like this is just a never-ending nightmare. I will have a few good days, start to feel a bit stronger, and then something else hits. It feels like months have gone by, but it has only been days. Imagine the love of your life, the only woman you have ever loved, the only person you have ever kissed, telling you she cheated on you for over 4 years simply because she was bored. Not because we fell out of love, not because of relationship issues, not even because of a lack of intimacy, just because she was bored. I do not know if that makes it worse or better. What do you think about this story? Write in comments. If you don't follow our channel Cheating Room, you will probably never hear from us again. If you are subscribed, congratulations, you will not miss any exciting story. Thank you for listening to this shocking story with us. See you again.
Bye bye.